three
One
hellos.
motion for quorum.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay.
We don't have the longer version.
Oh, okay, so there were.
Okay, so we're getting started. Welcome, everybody. You can get that, calling this meeting to order. The meeting of the Rules
that's right. I don't want to look
Police Commission.
now.
All right. Okay, the mics are not working.
We're good.
No, the mics are not working.
Turn it on.
Was that a C-type drone?
Yes.
What? Rules.
There.
Wrong community. What day is today? What meeting are you in?
Try the microphone.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, we are in business. All right. It is Wednesday, June 5th, 6:02 p.m. Welcome to the meeting of the Cleveland Community Police Commission's Rules Committee. And we will call this meeting to order and do a roll call. Commissioner Benito,
Present.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Present.
and I'm Pete Van Linen, I'm present as well. Any questions or thoughts about the agenda?
Good.
Looks good. Okay. All right, Charles? No agenda. Okay, so we're good with the agenda. I threw this on there without checking with anybody, but election of the committee chair. I think at this point we have stable membership. So if you're good with it, I kind of was assuming I would do it, if it's okay with you all. I'm happy to surrender that role.
Oh, no. I thought you said you wanted to do it.
I would never say that.
Or that you would do it.
I would do it. I said I would do it. Yes, I
You
will
wanna
do it. I would do it happily,
Are you sure?
reasonably happily.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, I'm fine to do it.
I make a motion to make Pete the permanent chair of the Rules Committee.
Well, I don't know about permanent. That
To
has a lot,
To
a
make-
wrong link
To
to it.
make Pete the chair
Okay, thank you.
forever, ever?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
I.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. All right. Moving into public comment. Do we have any public comments?
Not yet.
Okay. Do we have any public comments? Okay. All right. So let's just jump right in to old business, the CPC evidentiary manual. Evidentiary hearing manual, I guess, is the full term. So we have some copies that have been drafted, and we've had them for a few days at least. I don't know if you've had time to look at them, but I think we just need to go through. We don't have to do line by line, but we can look at
So,
what
The printed one is the shorter version.
for what is a shorter version?
I have the longer versions. Well, I think we need both. I don't know.
Okay, so
We should be talking about
I did
both.
print the longer version out, I just didn't realize that they were.
You guys need it?
I have mine. I
I
have.
have it on the computer.
Yeah.
You guys need it?
Okay.
Do you have the longer version?
Because there
Let me
was just
see.
a little rather than
This
kill.
is
I thought I
longer.
accidentally printed two.
Yeah,
the same
you've
thing.
got the longer version too.
Catch. Okay.
So we've all got it. We're good. I had to print them out just because I was trying to compare. Not the agenda. All right. Okay then. So I don't know that we have to go line by line, but it might be helpful. Martin, if you could just talk a little bit, sort of overall, about the approach and what we've got here, and then the difference between the two. I've kind of gone through and looked at the differences between the shorter version and longer version. We can, if you just want to introduce it, tee it up a little bit, that'd be great.
All right, thank you. We are back at it again with the evidentiary hearing manual draft, and hopefully we are getting close to finalizing what we want to certify as our first round of the manual. And since the last time this came before the Rules Committee, we had some additional input that came in from community members, from outside attorneys, from internal conversations. We had a meeting where we had, you know, really good feedback from the accountability committee on some of their concerns. So we hit it again. We went back with the manual and updated certain sections, which I'll walk you through in terms of the updates that have changed from the first iteration of the manual. I wouldn't even say the first iteration, I'd probably say like the 8th, but now we're on number 9. And I also took to heart every single person's feedback that has said this is too long. So we went back and did another short version of the updated version. So there's 2 versions now. People are mentioning 2 different versions. There's one that is a longer version, and there's one that is a shorter version, because we heard consistently, this is too long, it's too long. Well, I'm fine with shortening it, and I think shortening it is part of the final editing process of anything, right? Look at what you got, cut it back, where can you slash? So I did that as best as I possibly could. Yes, Commissioner Van Leer is correct. Certain sections did have to go a little bit beyond just deleting and instead had to go into some minor rewording. But I think it's substantially, if not like 99% similar, just with certain things removed. And certain techniques I employed in the shortened version were like turning paragraphs into lists, or, you know, getting rid of certain, I guess, lead up or build up information. We heard feedback from Executive Director Goodrick that we don't want all of our policies to be like training documents, but instead we want them to really hone in on the do's and don'ts for our evidentiary hearing manual. So that's what the shortened version's intent was. I'm looking at the longer version, but it's probably similar changes to the shortened version as well, because what I did was I edited the longer version and then I cut the longer version back. But I'll make a note that I did do some renumbering with our update. Some renumbering has occurred for the certain sections. And that's just to try to keep things a little bit more consistent with our manual and its format. But of course, I think there really is going to have to be some final renumbering once this is integrated with the rest of our manual. So please keep in mind that these numbers may change. A main change that I did was in the internally investigated administrative misconduct section to 2.6.1. I added the term administrative to our internally investigated misconduct and our externally investigated misconduct sections, because there was some confusion in terms of, okay, well, are we talking about administrative and criminal investigations? Because the process for those 2 are different, and it really threw people for a loop in terms of trying to detail the process inside of the internally investigated and the externally investigated misconduct sections. Okay, so I added that word administrative so I could limit those 2 sections to make sure we're all on the same page. We're not talking about the criminal stuff that's investigated by IA. We are in these sections talking specifically about the administrative. I know it's a technically longer word, which is annoying, but we got to cover our bases. Any feedback on that? All right, cool. I'll keep rolling. Keep it rolling. Go ahead.
No, I just thought, I mean, you can keep going if you have more you to say.
I have lots more to say.
Okay, should we?
So let me know what you want me to do.
Well, I think we should just start looking through and deciding, and you can weigh in, but
Okay.
I think let's just start moving through. So 2.4.4, I don't know, we could maybe just go by section if people have questions or thoughts, or if there aren't any, we just keep moving. So let's just do that.
So in terms of, do we want to discuss the longer version first and then discuss whether we want to do the shorter
I
version?
think we should do it side by side.
Cool.
Discuss each section and look at if there's questions about something that was
Sounds
with,
good.
you know, to some degree, no preference, but with the idea that keeping it short is better, like to see, okay, so in the shorter version, like in this first 2.4.4, there's really no difference. But then in 2.6, you know, it starts to change, so we can decide as we go what's missing, if
Yeah.
something that's edited out needs to be back in or not, and we can.
I kind of like taking out the places where we put whole chunks of the charter in, just because it adds a lot. But I wonder if there could be like a or like a, what do they call it when they do the tiny number?
Footnotes,
Footnotes,
endnotes.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
a footnote with the section of the, with the like charter.
So you're not saying a footnote with all the text, but just referring
No,
to
just say, we're like,
Just a citation.
just putting, for in 2.6, it says the commission is the final authority for disciplining officers in the city, footnote, and then saying, charter 115.5 and then the lines, not the actual text, but the like
Hmm,
line 20 to 30 or whatever part of the charter that is.
Yeah.
That way people can still reference it.
It could be a footnote, or it could just be, if it's something that short, it could just be in parentheses or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Rather than a footnote, but either way,
Yeah.
it's not bad idea.
But I think it was good to take out the big chunks of the charter.
I agree.
Okay. So in the first section there, I did have one flag that it talks about conducting the hearings for purposes of increasing discipline or initiating discipline where none was imposed. So my only question there is, like, in other parts of this rule, this draft, it talks about decreasing for retaliation. Do we need to mention that here? 2.4.4, very beginning.
By the way, through the chair, by the way, 2.4.4 is not part of the manual. It is a separate rule that is being amended because of the changes that are being made in this manual.
Right,
So no matter what, we have to change 2.4.4. So,
yeah,
so
okay.
just know that when we see the final version of the manual, it's not going to have 2.4.4 in it.
Right,
But that's just an FYI.
I think it'd be good to add that in.
to 2.4.4?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's,
Already some good language for that toward the bottom.
Yeah, it's already mentioned elsewhere. It's mentioned in the actual manual, so I think it's
we
probably
could just
good.
take that language.
Charles, you good with that? Okay.
So I'm just going to make red line edits on the full clean version as we go through it.
Great.
And I'm writing in there, adjudicating discipline decisions for the purposes of increasing, increasing discipline, decreasing discipline, or initiating discipline where
Sure.
none was imposed.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. All right. 2.6. So this is a major cut. It goes to, the short version goes to basically a summary, and it takes out the language of from the charter, but then there's also another paragraph that's removed about.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's the only paragraph that's left. Okay, never mind. That's the one that's left. Yeah. So it's just really taking out the charter language, and I think in this case, that seems fine, as long as we're good with the language about the commission being the final authority, and that if we're good with that summary, final authority for disciplining police officers can review cases with or without a complaint from a civilian. I don't like the word civilian. Well, that civilian's fine. Never mind. But only after the administrative authority before it has made a decision. So that seems pretty straightforward. And if we've then, put something in there about section 115.5, that seems good to me.
You want to, from what I'm hearing, you want a footnote in there.
You just say maybe, you just add the something like the Charter 115.5 gives the commission the final authority for disciplining, something like that.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it might be cleaner just to put it in the body rather than the footnote. It feels like,
Yeah.
and it's pretty, as long as it's short
Yeah.
and sweet, I think it's the same,
Yeah,
achieve the
for
same end, but it just is.
The other thing is, I wonder if instead of in the city, just saying for disciplining CDP police officers.
Because in the city would imply the other police departments, I suppose.
It's a technical,
Yeah,
but it's
it'd be understood, but we should make it clear, yeah.
CDP officers.
Noted, changed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 2.6 is good. 2.6.1, internally investigated administrative misconduct. Martin already mentioned the addition of the word administrative, which seems to make sense. And here, there's a big chunk that's been deleted for the short version, and it's turned into a list. There's 6 bullet points where there had been a few paragraphs before. Can you talk about that real quick and just summarize the change there and what?
Slash and burn. Just kind of did my best to summarize the previous version in a bullet list.
Do we think, I mean, as I read this, I totally get it. I think it's a good idea. I'm just wondering if there's any detail that will be missing that will raise questions like, well, so what exactly are we going to do, right? So it says, review and complete discipline divisional notices. So what it leaves out there is who will do it. But no, wait, it says the accountability committee's process. So it doesn't leave that out. I guess it's pretty much all in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say like, I mean, we just have the one version, so I don't know
Can you,
if there's a way to.
Oh, it's,
No, I have the only one that's,
there's another version, there's a longer version.
I think I have the longer one, I'm not sure that I have the short
So
one.
maybe you should get the shorter one.
Yeah,
We can print that out for you.
thank you.
the short one, you mean?
Yeah, if the short one's the one with bullet points
Yeah.
Yes.
here, then yes, that's the one I would make.
So essentially, I can, while we're printing it out, I can talk about that, but it says the accountability, so it has a paragraph that is similar, but it says charter gives the CPC the ability to serve as final authority on discipline was sufficient or excessive in limited cases. These cases are called externally investigated administrative misconduct cases. The accountability committee's process will generally include reviewing completed CPRB hearings, reviewing referred cases from the full commission, preliminary, I assume it means preliminarily as opposed to preliminary. Preliminarily dismissing cases as long as case files have not been requested, requiring the executive director to send a letter to the officer, unions, and complainant once requesting a case file, reviewing incidents where the CPRB did not apply any discipline, and requesting case files to the executive director as long as sufficient facts exist in the case that may warrant the full commission to modify a discipline decision.
I think one thing that's not in the bullet list, and I'm not sure that maybe it doesn't need to be, but the thing about if the case file is not requested, you don't need to, yeah, go for it.
I removed that.
I think that was a good move.
I removed
Can you
that.
say more? I mean, can you finish this up? Like,
Yeah. So the part of it that says that if the committee is discussing a case but has not officially requested the case file, then they can dismiss it without having to send it to the full commission. So let's say we're just more informally discussing a case, then it just kind of made clear that. But I think that it kind of actually makes it sound
is
a little
that
more
not in the
complicated.
third bullet? Or?
So I think I prematurely said I removed that because
Oh.
that's not what I was talking about.
Oh.
What I did remove, because I think what you're talking about is a different section. It's further down
Oh.
the list, talking about like what the accountability committee does once it's reviewing things in the case file. What I did delete
Oh, you're right.
was our previous conversation on the accountability committee being able to skip having to request
Yeah.
a case file and then directly recommend the case for a hearing to the full commission.
Yeah, I'm glad. we
So
took
I
that out.
deleted that, which is basically now forcing the accountability committee to receive a case file and a recommendation for a hearing by the executive director.
Which I think is good because if we recommend a case for hearing before we receive the case file, I think it implies a certain prejudice to the case. That if, without even seeing the facts, we're saying we think there should be a hearing, then I think that implies that we're not necessarily being what are we basing that on?
Basing the decision or the determination on
Yes,
facts.
yeah,
That's what we should be doing.
And I have a quick question about the short version. So is the short version just there for convenience? Like, what are we doing with this short version?
So a lot of people made comments about how long the document was, and so I think that, so it's just for us to decide whether we think that the short version is the more effective version in terms of like for people to be able to read it and understand what our procedures are, or if we need the more detail in the longer version. Would you?
So we'll be picking either or.
Yeah.
Got it, thank you.
Other,
Or you're also picking, through the chair, you're also picking neither or
Yeah.
amending it, you know, how you see fit.
so I just wanted to clarify, the question you had about the accountability committee being able to dismiss cases as long as the case files have not been requested, that is the third bullet, right? Or am I misunderstanding your question? It says preliminarily dismissing cases
Yeah,
before they request, so that,
That's the fifth bullet?
the
Third
third
bullet.
bullet, 2.6.2.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right, sorry.
So that still is,
Yeah, you're
that's,
right,
that's
yeah.
in there still, and it's, sounds like it's mentioned there.
Yeah.
I have one, let's see, question. The first bullet says reviewing completed CPRB hearings.
are you in 2.6.1 or 2.6.2?
Oh,
I didn't think we skipped, I think.
sorry, it's my bad.
There's a lot of-
It still is the third bullet though.
Yeah, the same thing, so but that is the third bullet at 2.6.1, sorry. Too many copies of things in front
Yeah,
of me.
there's a lot of.
That's a short version.
Short version, third bullet does say preliminarily, and the very same language is in 2.6.2, that's why I got confused. Okay. All right, then I don't have any more questions about 2.6.1.
Can I just, to the chair, can I just make I just had a couple like just grammatical things. Can, instead of it saying reviewing referred cases from full commission, I just edited, switched the referred in the cases, reviewing cases referred by full commission. And then I caught the same preliminarily as you did. So I just thought it was just it's just a small thing. It's just a grammatical.
Yeah, it's not a big deal, but yeah, it's good to catch. Any other questions on 2.6.1? All right, then let's move on. 2.6.2.
Oh.
What?
Okay, never mind, sorry.
So this again,
Um,
go ahead,
sorry,
talk about it. Yeah.
before we move on to 2.6.2, there is the specific is bullet number 5, requiring the executive director to send a letter to the officer and unions once requesting a case file. So this had always been here in all the versions that I've produced, but does this merit further discussion on when we send our notices to the officers and to the unions? Now, from my research, I haven't seen anything specifically saying when we have to do it, but is this the appropriate time to do that? Or do we wait until the accountability committee is making a decision to recommend the case for a hearing and setting that hearing date? When do we want to send the notice through the executive director to the officers and unions?
I think that my impulse is at this point, I think more transparency the better. And especially since all these meetings are public, I would rather them receive a notice from us rather than somebody's watching it and saying, oh, saw they were discussing this case. And I think also then I think it would clear up any confusion, because I could see a situation where the kind of preliminary discussions happening, and then somebody watches the live stream and then it kind of like goes through the rumor mill and they're like, oh, they're having a hearing for your case, before that's not even true yet. But if people were notified and it was like, okay, here are the steps that it's going to go through, first the accountability committee will, decide whether to recommend it to the full commission, and then the full commission will make a decision. I just think that would be better.
So to the chair, I agree. I think that maybe at this point we could send a letter out if we're discussing it on a live stream, and then it could perhaps just lay out what the process would look like. So it could say, this will be the next step, and then, you know, just to have some clarity, but it could just lay out the process.
Are you saying when he starts creating that time?
So yeah, this part here on the 2.6.2, once we are considering, maybe we could send a notification out that we're considering the case and that, you know, what the process would look like if we proceed with it. I mean, I think it's a good point that we don't want a rumor mill going. We don't want misinformation about what we're actually doing in discussions about the case.
Through the chair, I'm just throwing this counter argument out there, not because I believe in it, not because I don't. You know, this is a very procedural and task-oriented process that is largely being shouldered by staff. Does the commission have the staff capacity to be keeping up with all these notices and communications?
Hopefully we will win it. One day, that's the hope.
I mean, I was thinking like a form letter. Like it would just be like a form letter where you're essentially just putting in, like, you write one letter and then you just put in the date and the name of the officer. And then we wouldn't have any dates like hearing dates or anything like that. But I wouldn't want to put an extra burden on the staff. But I was just thinking, write one letter and it's kind of like you just change the name and the date you're sending it out.
I was gonna say, is that possible?
The only thing I would put in there is that if an officer does not receive this letter for any reason, it does not mean that this case is defunct in any way. Like I think it's a courtesy, but I could see people saying, well, I didn't get the letter, so this whole case should be thrown out. You know, so I think you need something in there that just says this letter is a courtesy, and it will be sent to the division, and it's up to the division to distribute the letter. Because tracking down officers, figuring out where to send these things is problematic. So we will, you know, we send a courtesy notice to the chief's office for them to distribute down would be more appropriate.
So should it say send to the division and the unions?
Yeah. So the
Instead of the
unions and the
officer?
division is probably better.
That's what it says.
It can
That's the
say,
language right now.
It says officer.
requiring the executive, I can say, here's my suggested edits through the chair. Requiring the executive director to send a courtesy letter to the officers and unions through the chief,
Through the division?
well, who we're sending it to? We're sending it to the chief, literally, correct?
Yeah, we'll go to the chief.
Okay, through the chief of police. Once requesting a case file. Edit recommended.
I mean, just on an earlier point, when we say civilian earlier, we said member of the public. So, under 2.6, should we just change 2.6 to say member of the public? Complaint from a member of the public?
That would make sense.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Any more questions on 2.6.1?
No, I think the letter's good.
All right. 2.6.2, this is the externally investigated administrative misconduct. And this version, again, summarizes in the bullet list, you know, the few paragraphs of text in the longer version. And it's a very similar, there's a few differences. You want to talk about it?
No, I was just going to add that the changes that we just made to the 2.6.1, I am totally fine with carrying them forward into the 2.6.2 sections that are mirror images of that.
Yeah.
Can I ask something out here?
Sure.
Okay, so, one thing I know we've talked about earlier is, and maybe was already discussed in between, was the word alleged misconduct. I don't know if that's something, you know, obviously if you start using that, then you probably have to use it the whole way through, but And I'm not sure if that's what's used when, like, in the division when they investigate things, or they just refer to them as misconduct investigations, but something to consider. Also, will generally, looking at that first paragraph there, will generally include but not be,
Where are you? No, I'm sorry.
sorry, I'm just like looking at the 2.6.1.
Okay.
I mean, it says internally investigated administrative misconduct, and we had talked at some point about using alleged misconduct until it's sort of, verified, I guess.
I think these are cases. We don't have to use the word alleged.
So just to the chair to clarify, so when we would receive these cases, they would have finished the entire disciplinary process.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
So the cases are adjudicated, yeah,
They wouldn't be alleged.
they wouldn't be alleged, they would have
To
decided.
be, we did have that discussion before in a previous meeting, so I just want
Oh,
to
thank you.
acknowledge that you're right, we did discuss that.
But in that case, if the third bullet
All right,
point making any
So I think
sense,
we need to just,
Yeah, we got-
we can't just keep going back and forth. If you have comments, we'll figure it out, but it's gonna just take us forever as is. So let's stick with the committee, and the co-chairs. All right. 2.6.2, changes from above, carry through. Any other questions around on that bullet list? Okay. 2.6.3. Executive director must intake complaints submitted directly to the CPC. And we have reference to manual rule 2.4, which is actually above.
Through the chair, I did create a proposed intake form that now outlines the process for the applicants, or not the applicants, the people that are appealing it. And it hopefully is a little bit more transparent for them in terms of when the CPC can actually hear their matter versus when they need to come back or wait, or, and then also gives them a little bit better of a timeline and insight into our steps and our processes, so they can follow along as they watch their case go through the commission's process. So maybe I can if we adopt that eventually, I can make a change to specifically reference that form in 2.6.3, but that's why I'm bringing it up now.
I think referencing it here would make sense, yeah. Okay. Any questions on 2.6.3?
Nope.
Two 2.6.4, the scope of the CPC's review.
I liked how this was shortened on the short version.
That includes the criminal matters and Garrity. I'll take a minute to review this.
To the chair, I think my only concern with this section is I don't think that the average person is going to know what Garrity is. So I feel like there needs to be either like a end note, or there should be some sort of clarity. I mean, I know it's our rules, but our rules are also, sometimes read by members of the public.
Let's put that
And I
in.
would want them to know what the Garrity law is.
And on the website, we could have a link.
Yeah, so.
The Garrity could be hyperlinked to a general explainer of Garrity.
Through the chair, also there is the longer version of the Garrity section from the longer version of the manual. So if you want to go with the longer version for this specific section, you could do that. But I think also the ideas that are being proffered here, footnotes or direct links to Garrity information on our website, could be helpful.
Yeah, and the longer version actually
Doesn't explain what Garrity is, it just has a little bit more information. So, yeah. And it's our, like Dr. Adams said, it's our rule, but I think that we can link to it so that people have more context.
I'm not advocating for a longer document. I just want to make sure that when, people
Yeah, they-
read it, that they actually understand the jargon.
Yeah, we can work a way to get at least a little bit of information there and that very quick summary of it and then a link that would make sense.
Okay, I will draft a one sentence, because I have to be counting sentences now, characters even.
Yeah.
One sentence on an introduction to Garrity, and I will hyperlink it to the Garrity page of our website.
I just want to add, like, when I just curiously looked it up, it says, like, one sentence, the right of a public employee not to be compelled to incriminate themselves by their employer.
I mean, that could even be incorporated into the body. It could be that very first line. The commission implements the following policies to recognize Garrity concerns, which, the concerns regarding Garrity, which, what you just said, like that quick summary. I think the more we can just keep things in the body without footnotes,
Sure,
the
yeah.
better. And then the link too. But,
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Donaldson? Okay. All right. 2.6.5, appeal pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, section 2506.
To the chair, it's just like another grammatical thing where it says after the comma and if not waive,
Yeah.
can it just say or?
I think that the idea here is that if they don't request it, they're waiving it. Is that what it means? I think, but there just needs to be some language clarification. I agree. Just, may request.
Yeah.
I don't know. And if not requested, they waive whatever. Yeah, we'll figure it out. But that, you see what the question is there? I had flagged that as well. It just is confusing the way it's written.
That's fine, I need the word waive in there.
Yeah.
I was gonna say or waive, but is it?
Yeah.
Is the I just want this is just clarification for myself. But if they don't request, is it kind of like waiving?
That's a
It's
waiver by
by
default.
default. Okay.
I think so, right?
Yeah, so through the chair, I just changed it to, as such, comma, officers may request or waive, may request, or they waive,
Yeah. Or,
and then get rid of that final comma.
Like
So,
or if not, they waive.
or if not.
as such, officers may request, or if not, they waive.
That seems clear to me.
Could we just
Or and if
add
not,
a half a sentence at the bottom under, like, at the very bottom of the section that says absence of a request
Yeah.
is a waive, like, is seen as
That
a
makes
waiver.
sense. I think that's more clear if it's up there. And if they don't request, they waive it.
So just at the bottom here.
like as such, in the absence of a request, an officer will waive or waives or something in that.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Martin? At the end of after the list.
Okay, and then what do you want the top part to say? Just as such, officers may request and then comma. Officers may
Yeah.
request the following procedures.
Yes. Very good. All right.
Through the chair, I added at the bottom of the paragraph, I just added after the list, in the absence of of a request, officers will waive these procedures.
Great.
Yeah. So in terms of that paragraph at the end, it said officers must request items 1 and 6 at least 2 weeks in advance of the hearing. So they have to ask for the transcript and they have to ask for the, what is that number 6? I think it was a little confusing. The commission subpoena power to acquire and present evidence. How is an officer requesting that?
They would probably submit, through the chair, they probably would submit a request. They would probably have a problem obtaining a document, or they would have problem obtaining somebody who is a witness to the event, or something like that, and they need help in order to adequately defend themselves in front of the commission. So they, from what I'm understanding, or could imply from this, I don't know if we really need to spell it out, they probably would reach out to us and say, I'm having this trouble. I'm requesting the use of your subpoena power to get this information that I need. And we need adequate time in order to accommodate that request, which is why Commissioner Benito flagged that we should probably add an additional 2 weeks to the time frame for that one, and also for their request to have a stenographer at the hearings.
I think we could spell that out a little bit more in the letter we send to the officers. I think it's fine to not spell it out in our rules.
You could also say the use of the commission's subpoena power, just add use of that, because that's more clear to me. It was really confusing to me the way it was written, so I'm assuming I'm not the only one, but.
Sure.
Okay, I made that change.
Cool. All right. Any other comments on 2.6.5?
I just have one more question on the last sentence before the last section in 2.6.5. I just had a question. Is the request denied if they don't meet the 2-week deadline? So if they don't request it within 2 weeks, what do we do? Do we deny it?
All right. 2.6.6, preparing the case file for the accountability committee.
Through the chair on that comment to the co-chair, we can handle that on a case-by-case basis, okay? I think we really want to weigh our options, and making a flat-out decision may not always be in our best interest, but I see that we have strong authority if we want to follow what we're saying the rules are if they've been presented in a timely manner and reply consistently. But of course, we can always discuss things.
Of course, yeah, I mean, I think the word must is in there. And I don't know, I will have to see how it works, and we can always come back and revisit this. But must means must, right? So you could get charges of favoritism or something if you do it for one and not for the other. Or bias or whatever it might be. But I think I think must is a good word here. You have something?
Oh, I had a question about 2.6.6.
Great, go for it.
I was wondering why the CBA is highlighted, including any CBA grievance.
That was a specific request from somebody. I don't remember who it was through the chair. Oh, I think it was through Executive Director Goodwin. For if you're looking at 2.6.6, preparing the case file for the accountability committee, you're looking at number 5, jurisdiction, a statement on why the CPC can hear the case, its procedural status, and the procedural history leading up to the CPC hearing, including any CBA grievances. How and where that case is in the grievance process could be relevant to the commission in certain circumstances. So obtaining that information should be on our list.
That makes sense. Okay, cool.
So are there any questions about what's been eliminated from the longer version? It's really only paragraph at the end, I believe, short paragraph at the end, and
that's included in the first paragraph now.
oh, okay. Right. So the first paragraph is shortened a bit.
Yeah, I think that looks good.
Case file recommendations. Mr. Donaldson?
Right.
No, I was just asking.
I was gonna, not just 2.6.6, but I just noticed as I was reading through that there's inconsistency with how to refer to days and times. So 2.6.6 says 15 working days. 2.6.7 says 14 calendar days. 2.6.7 says within 30 days. 2.6.8 says within 6 calendar days. So I think however we're gonna do that, we should try to be consistent with if they're gonna be calendar days or just 30 days or working days. It's a minor thing, but I just wanted to.
And even 2.6.5 says 2 weeks, so we should probably put everything in days. And if there's a reason for one thing to be calendar days versus working days, might be a good reason, I don't know.
Well, through the chair, my only response to that is that generally you see like timing deadlines for some like a statute of limitations or some sort of timing deadline that's held in the court of law or something. Those are usually in not like a working day sort of capacity. They're in a general 2-week timeline or 30-day timeline. But when it came to the specific tasks that are tasked of our staff, including the executive director, I used the term working days because I was thinking of this person working on this. Mm-hmm. Is that the way we need to be applied? No, that's just sort of my mentality of where I was trying to approach it. But if you're saying, you have a timing deadline to file or an appeal, or you have a timing deadline to submit a request for additional procedural stuff, that's usually includes non-working days.
I guess that's fine with me. I just didn't know if it was intentional or not, but it sounds like it was intentional.
Yeah, I think it's something to look at because, I mean, at the very least, to not use weeks and just use days. I mean,
yeah, that's my first thought through the chair was that I should probably switch everything into terms of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them could be working days, some
Yeah.
could be calendar days. I think there's a logic to that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Noted.
Okay. Great. So we're still on, where are we, 2.6.6? I think we're pretty much done with that unless there are other questions. Okay, 2.6.7, file review by the Accountability Committee. And this is also, 3 paragraphs, including a reference to section 115.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or 7 paragraphs are now several bullet points, 7 bullet points.
Through the chair. Okay, I've also received post feedback from this on this edit specifically, even though this has been pretty consistent throughout all of the drafts I've released. Coming up with new ideas and comments is always welcome, no matter the time. So, did receive some feedback that we want to maybe consider the closeness the accountability committee is to preparing the case file and the case recommendations to the full commission, right? So right now, how it's drafted is that the accountability committee is sort of working jointly with the executive director to prepare the brief that's going to be in front of the commission. Is that the best practice when the accountability committee could consist of 5 members, and these 5 members are already almost opining as to what they believe to be the merits of the case? Now, they have seen all the documents, right? So they're able to come up with whatever decision they want. It's not like they are prematurely doing this. But it's just or that they're not unfairly doing this or in an unbiased manner. But is the timing right for the accountability committee to be so involved in the case versus leaving things to the executive director and their staff? But they're on the flip side, now you're relying a lot on just the input of the staff to be briefing creating the brief, to be really moving this case through the commission's pipeline to the full commission. So there is a little bit of a question in terms of how does the commission want this power dynamic between accountability committee and the executive director to play out?
One kind of compromise option could be that you could say something like the chair and one additional member of the accountability committee will work with the executive director. That way, if there are 5 members on the committee, it's not the whole committee that's working on that.
This is an important consideration for several reasons. One is take people out of it and think about the process. So I know there was controversy because they see my face and they see certain commissioners' faces in this process, and they think of it from the perspective of how do those individuals interact with each other.
Right.
The problem here is twofold. One is commissioner time. Okay. If you're saying, well, let's assign 2 commissioners to do a brief that has 14 days to be done, and they don't want to show up, they're canceling, they're flaking out, we have significant problems. The other issue here is why? Like almost nobody does it this way. CPRB members don't go down into the OPS investigation and say, let's co-investigate together, right? They say, we're going to trust you to do a full investigation. You bring us the findings, and our job is to just adjudicate. So are you adjudicators or are you the attorneys, right? Let's look at this from a corporate perspective, right? The judges aren't getting down into the weeds with the into the defendants or the prosecutors thing and saying, let me help you create the case that I'm going to adjudicate over, right? The way I see it is the accountability committee has to pre-screen these things, or else every case would go before the full thing, and some of them just aren't worth the time. So the accountability committee's role should be very quickly deciding case or no case based on what the executive director and the team says, right? After that, you have to let staff do its job and prepare it thoroughly for you and deliver that to all commissioners at the same time, right? So that they can look at that. I think you're going to run into problems with who do you assign to do it, how many people are working on any given day. You know, you can significantly hold up the process. As we get later into this, it says, well, they're going to jointly do it. Does that mean we need a committee vote? Who's in charge? What if we don't agree on what's in the brief? How long does it get argued? I mean, if you think back to the time where you had to have multiple people working on a press release and we never got a press release out because nobody could agree on little tiny words. So we could conceivably have a brief caught up for months and months or years over wording of the brief when staff can just do it for you. You don't have to agree with the brief. That's what the adjudicators do. They can look at it and say, we don't think this is good. We think, you know, this evidence is lacking, whatever, right? But you guys should be considering how other people do it. Most places utilize their staff as efficiently, as effectively as possible to move it forward and to, you know, getting down into the weeds of the case before you have to hear the case may not be necessary for you. If you agree you're going to do it, then just wait for the briefs from both sides, read the briefs, and make a decision.
I think one question I'm having is, so we go from the case file that goes to the accountability committee. And this case file is separate from the, I think this is the same thing that I struggled with last time. So what's the initial report that the executive director puts out that goes to the accountability committee?
Case file,
2.6.6 says preparing the case file for the accountability committee. Is that what you're asking?
No, because there's two things that get prepared. One is prior to the,
The initially, it's the analysis
right,
that the executive director has to do within, I think it's 15 days. Then that's the first part,
right. And what do we call that?
the analysis.
The case analysis?
The case file is what it's called.
Case
Yeah.
file.
Yeah, so I think this is where it seems like we've kind of almost like jumped ahead because Okay, because at this point, the file review by the accountability committee is just reviewing the information to decide whether to decide whether to vote to refer the case for an evidentiary hearing to the full commission. So I think that this sentence here on
Where are you? Yeah, sorry.
on 2.6.7, the accountability committee must prepare a case package for the full commission to review, I think is. So this is not,
It's not the same as the brief.
I think, through the chair, if, it might help if we just deleted that first sentence, the accountability must prepare a case package for the full commission to review during evidentiary hearing, because that is sort of what you're saying, putting the cart before the horse. Why are they preparing a case package for the full commission if we haven't even in the manual talked about what they're doing once they receive the case file and package or whatever from the executive director? So maybe if we just delete that first sentence and go right into the committee shall, obviously I can put like some other first sentence there so it doesn't look funky. But it could be like the committee shall, within 14 days to receiving the case package from the executive director, review the case package, decide whether to recommend a hearing or dismiss the full package, coordinate commissioner calendar, set a hearing, send notice to hearing officers, coordinate continuances.
well, and I actually think that then, okay, so the first two bullets are actually, I think, a separate section. Because
Okay.
that is deciding whether the case goes to whether a hearing would be set. So I'm wondering if these other things,
No, hold on a sec.
Yeah.
Sorry.
oh, go ahead.
My understanding is that once they have the case files from the division, that there's going to be a hearing, right? Unless they get the full commission to say no.
So once they get the case filed, the accountability committee votes on whether
Right.
either way, they have to make a recommendation to the full commission. So that recommendation is either yes, evidentiary
Right.
hearing, or no evidentiary hearing.
But they
So,
can't dismiss without the full commission.
right,
Right, so the idea is that through the chair, the accountability committee is going to receive the case package with the file and that smaller version of the brief from the executive director, right? So they're gonna get this. Then, if they decide they want to have a hearing, they don't need to get the full permission from the commission to have the hearing, they can just go ahead and schedule it. However, if they want to dismiss it, that's when they have to go to the full commission and dismiss it.
Oh, I thought
they had to, I thought that you had to then send it to the full commission in order to have the hearing.
You can recommend to the full commission to dismiss it, to not hear it. But once you have the file, you have to do, the accountability no longer can do it by themselves.
Right, no, but
Right.
what you just said is that the accountability committee can say, we want to have a hearing, and then it doesn't go to the full commission.
I think they could maybe say that in response if you bring a request to dismiss. But I just feel like it adds an extra unnecessary step when we can assume that the commission's going to hear everything that's brought to it or that is being brought within it, and only things are being dismissed if the full commission is approving it. So either it's going to go all the way through with a full adjudication by us, or it's going to be at some point dismissed with the permission of the full commission.
Okay, so it only, because I think earlier, so review case package and decide on whether to recommend hearing or dismiss the case to the full commission. So what you're saying here is if a hearing is recommended, the accountability committee just does that. It does not go to the full commission. Okay. That was different than what I had imagined it as.
But is that okay? I think, to me, I think it works better because now we don't have to wait for an extra month, depending on when the accountability committee meets to say, okay, we're going to have the hearing. And also you kind of want to do a little bit, you sort of want to not have your hearing.
discussion.
Yeah, you're trying to eliminate the discussion of the merits of the case before the full commission's actually hearing the case. And if you're going to a full commission meeting and recommending that you have a hearing, people are gonna want to know why. And if you're recommending it and you're gonna be telling them why, you're pretty much discussing the case.
Right,
We get stuck in this whole sort of catch-22 of not being able to discuss the merits of a motion until we bring a motion, but then we discuss the merits anyway. So
I think my only concern with that is that, to me, setting a hearing within 30 days of the accountability committee meeting is a lot more difficult than 30 days from whenever the full commission meeting is. So I guess one thing I'm wondering is 30 days enough?
To the chair, 30 days is a long time in the disciplinary world, so that,
Okay.
you know, one of the original, when I got this, like the feedback I got when I first tried to do a draft of this from people I shared it with was,
Too long.
you're adding, if you add up all the things, so 15 days plus 30 days plus, 15 days plus,
Right.
you end up with like 90 days, and then you look at that in the holistic process of when did this complaint start,
Right,
right?
yeah.
So you're adding this absorbent amount of time, so you need to press yourselves. The only thing I would recommend here is you, instead of saying coordinate commission calendars, the way that our rules read now in the beginning is that co-chairs
Right.
are responsible for setting hearings at the beginning, and hearings are special full commission meetings, right? They're their own version of, so the only thing I would say is coordinate. I would just say accountability chair instead of, be clear, coordinates with the co-chairs to set a hearing within 30 days. I think that's more in line with the process.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah, and accountability chair, this is more about like, the accountability chair should take a lot of these things, instead of saying the accountability committee, yes, you have to meet within 14 calendar days, receiving the package and vote, right? Then the committee responsibilities would end there. The rest of these would be accountability chair responsibilities to work with the executive director to ensure the notices are sent, to request additional files if necessary. And then, and if it's a dismissal, to work on the motion for dismissal to go to the co-chairs, right? So
Yeah.
those things are, I think, strictly in the purview of the chair. You don't need the whole committee to work on those. So I would just have a dividing line that after there's a vote, the rest of it is on the accountability chair to organize.
I'm good with that change.
That seems to make sense. Any other thoughts?
So it sounds like if we're not hearing any sort of pushback in terms of separating the accountability committee a little bit more from the brief process, we can sort of take that direction and start applying it here in 2.6.7 with this first sentence where it says, accountability committee must prepare a case package for the commission to review full evidentiary hearing. We could just scratch this whole thing and say, the accountability committee must meet once it receives the case
Yes.
package from the executive director and shall
Yeah.
blank.
Yeah, I think that's the confusing sentence right there,
Okay.
Because we're not really.
because then we get to 2.6.8, and where I had a problem was when it says, the accountability committee will jointly prepare a brief for the full commission. That's coming up. I think that's where we really need
Yeah.
to distinguish. That's what I was alluding to is
Right.
why would that be and how complicated it can be if you have to jointly prepare a brief.
So, yeah, that sounds good to me. I do have some language questions here. In 2.6.6, we talk about case file, then we say case package, then we say case file, then we say case package. So what, are those different things?
Yeah, the case file is just literally the documents. Case package would include the brief from the executive director.
Okay, so I think that we need to, because like, we're going back to 2.6.6, it has
So yeah,
says
it's
preparing the-
case file, not case.
and then it says the executive director must send the case package to the accountability committee within 15 working days after completing the case file. So there's, in that sentence, there are two different things.
Okay, hold on. 2.6.6, so prepare a case file for review before the accountability committee. So I think where I'm getting confused here is, should I say, because at the same time, the executive director is also preparing the case file, right? Like making sure that the case file has all the stuff that's in it. If there's things that are missing. So there is some preparation that has to go into that. and then adding on the mini brief for the accountability committee would create the package. So
Yeah.
maybe if I change that first sentence and say, or the designee shall prepare the case file for review before the accountability committee, the executive must send the case.
I think it should be packaged because the only time we should be using case file is that is what the executive director is requesting,
Yeah.
like from the city. And then once he has those case files, he prepares the case package, and that's what we all receive.
To the chair, is it possible to go back up to 2.6.6 where you have the list, you have case summary, case comparison, case full case file, maybe you can add maybe case brief and case packet, and then it could all be defined in 2.6.6, and then all the language could be consistent.
Well, case package 2.6.6 says the case package should include all those things. So that's clear. So
The title of 2.6.6
should be
needs to
case package,
case package, yeah.
right?
Okay.
And then the rest is okay.
Or change
So
the title from 2.6.6
that becomes
to
a case
prepare the
package.
case packet. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it
that
should
makes
just,
more sense here.
it should be changed in the title and then in that first sentence.
I got it.
But then, do we need to add the brief, or is that the?
That's
Brief comes later.
Okay.
Brief will come later when it comes to actually preparing the brief for the hearing, the full hearing.
Yeah, okay. So then we'll fix that. And going back to 2.6.7.
I'm saying the accountability shall meet once they review the case package from the executive director. And shall,
coordinate commission calendars, etc.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then after the,
And then
If recommending hearing, the accountability committee chair shall, along with the executive director.
Another question, I'll wait till you finish. The second to last bullet point says, so this makes it sound like so I know it becomes it says request additional files if necessary. Should that be instructs the executive director to request additional files if necessary?
I think that,
Or is that assumed?
I think this may be another instance of us getting the accountability committee too close to the fire.
Yeah.
In terms of saying, well, what's missing? I think maybe what the accountability committee may want to do is like during this discussion, say, we could foresee how there could be holes in this by pointing this stuff out, and then it's up to the executive director to figure out if he or she wants to pursue that for the full commission. But starting to control what is in the case file and case package is starting to get a little bit too close. if we
Maybe
want to
it's
call that.
more like either delete that entirely or determine with the executive director whether or not additional files are needed.
I'm just going to delete it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Which one are we doing?
Second last bullet in that list in 2.6.7 about requesting additional files.
And then state the reason for any dismissal. So how I broke it up was I have the committee shall, those first two bullets. Then I have a third bullet that says, if recommending for hearing, the committee shall, and then I broke those other things into 3 mini bullets underneath that. And then the last bullet is state the reason for any dismissal and send notice to officer and complainants. So do I have that be a if recommending for dismissal and then comma? Okay. Okay, do we need to do anything else? Okay.
Well, wait, they can't notice an officer that it's being dismissed unless the full commission voted on it, so we're ahead there. That's why I'm saying like the next step here is the chair has to work with the executive director to develop the motion for dismissal for the full commission, because you're not,
Right.
until they pass that motion, there is no dismissal.
Right.
So
Okay, I'll delete that section. That's a good call.
Yeah.
So I'll just change it to if recommending for dismissal, state the reason for any dismissals. And what do you want to say?
and work with the accountability chair will work with the executive director on the motion for the full commission to dismiss. or something along those
So
lines.
let's,
But I like the if then. So then after review case package and decide whether to recommend hearing or dismiss the case, I would, maybe maybe we change that language to say whether to dismiss the case to the full commission, comma, or move forward with an evidentiary hearing. And then that way it's clear that way. And then for the next section is if dismissing the case to the full commission, and then bullet point for working with the executive director to write the motion. And then second bullet point, after the motion passes, then, or if the motion passes, then sending the notice of dismissal.
2 tracks. So you just divide it into, we do this if it's dismissed, we do this if it moves forward. And then you put the tasks underneath it for each one.
yeah, I'm doing that.
Thank you.
I just have one more question. It's just a logistical thing. When we say that we're sending notice of the hearing to officer unions, etc., when? What's the time frame
After
for
it
that?
passes. Oh, you're saying,
I'm just saying, it just says send notice. I'm just trying to figure out.
It would have to be when we agree to the date, so like I think you have to have a date.
Okay.
That would be my guess is once we confirm the date of the hearing, then we send
within
the
24
notice.
hours, yeah.
Can we say once date is confirmed, send notice of hearing to officer?
I would say maybe we could say within 24
I
hours.
just wanted like
24 hours
yeah.
after confirmation
Something.
of date, notice must be sent.
something to that effect.
Okay, we want the committee chair to be sending the notice of the hearing to so the previous process that we talked about for notices for the officers would be to have the co-chairs communicate to the chief. No, wait. We're saying that there's some sort of buffer there, right? Like the chief is then sending the notices out, or are we like getting the addresses and sending it directly? And is it the co-chair sending the email, sending the notice, or is it the chair of the committee, the accountability committee?
What do you have in your draft letters here?
I have it as the accountability committee chair, I think.
No, it's fine. It's the same reason that when they send the disciplinary notices to officers, they all have the same address on them. It's the Department of Public Safety. They get it through internal delivery. So nobody's delivering notices to officers' addresses for a couple of reasons. One is it keeps it off the public record, so that notice of that we're investigating is a public record, so somebody can request it, and then we don't have to redact anything because the letter just goes to the Department of Public Safety, and it's like inter-office mail, right? So we're the city of Cleveland. We're not sending this to the officer directly. We're sending it to their department that they work inter-office and distributing it that way. So all the letters would go right to DPS.
So to the chair, with that said, then it might make more sense to make them parallel and have them go through the co-chairs. The co-chairs sending the hearing letter out, since the co-chairs are going to be scheduling the hearing. And once the accountability committee pretty much prepares everything and decides how they're going to move, then once you get to the actual hearing process, a lot of those things with the briefs and everything and getting them and receiving them are going to go through the co-chairs. So it might make more sense to have that hearing notice be sent through the co-chairs at that point, because there's a kind of a shift in some of the duties and responsibilities at a certain point. I'm okay either way, but I just wanted to.
Maybe you could have them CC the accountability chair just so that they know.
I mean, I think the accountability chair should be CC'd on.
Yeah, I think just
All
for
the
tracking it
correspondence, yeah.
internally. But I'm fine with having the co-chairs do it.
Okay, I have it worded now. Send notice of hearing to officer unions, complainant, if applicable, through the chief of police and the co-chairs, and post notice to the commission's website.
So then we would also want to make the co-chairs who would coordinate continuance request? Would that be the co-chairs or the accountability committee chair? I think at this point, if the co-chairs are the people sending out the notices, then I think that you become the main point of contact. I think it would be kind of confusing to be like, but if you want a continuance, you go to this person,
I
yeah.
guess like my thinking is that what I would like is, what I don't want is too much. I just want there to be a clear point of contact person at like the different stages. And so
Right.
when it switches over to sort of like co-chairs taking more responsibility, I wouldn't want it to go back to then now you have to go contact. So
Right,
however
exactly.
we do that, I just want to make sure that the accountability chair is kind of pushing everything forward until the point where we have to send the hearing notice. So I just want to be clear, but I just don't want people to be confused about who they need to contact.
Right. Well, and the briefs go to the co-chairs anyway. So,
Once it becomes a full commission meeting, technically the co-chairs are
Yeah.
running it, so like.
so I think that makes sense just to have the co-chairs do it.
Yeah.
But maybe have them CC the accountability committee chair just so everyone's on the same page.
Okay, we need to keep moving here. 2.6.8, pre-hearing procedures. The officer submitting a brief to the full commission in advance of the evidentiary hearing. These are optional, 6 calendars ahead, optional. There's implantation, I'm assuming is not implantation of discipline in third bullet. Implementation, right.
Third bullet?
Third bullet should say implementation, not implantation. 8,000 character limit or 3 pages, not including exhibits. No response briefs. No amendments unless new evidence. And all briefs and evidence redacted.
Oh, that's good to me.
And there's a formatting for the briefs. 4 points there. So that looks good. The last one is CPC's executive director, not the last one, but the last paragraph in that section about jointly preparing a brief for the full commission that incorporates the recommendations of the accountability committee. Co-chairs distribute the briefs, ensure documents are properly redacted and posted on the commission's website.
I think kind of based on our discussion, I think we're just recognizing that's the role of the executive director.
Yeah, that's
And,
why I was kind of
yeah,
finding
that, and the shortened version doesn't have that anyway, so we're good.
Well, yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Okay.
The top of page 5,
Okay, top of page 5.
it says,
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, we should take that out then.
Through the chair, I wrote, in addition to the officer, the CPC's executive director should prepare a brief for the full commission that incorporates their recommendations.
And I guess, at what point are we making recommendations?
The executive director is always making recommendations.
No, it says,
That incorporates the recommendations of the accountability committee.
Oh yeah, I got rid of that.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's just the executive director's recommendations.
okay. There's no, but the accountability has input on those recommendations, but they're the ED's recommendations. I'm sorry to.
What we're saying is that we don't want the accountability committee to be opining on whether they recommend or not based on what reasons, too early. So trying to add additional
Okay.
fire into
Yeah.
the brief
That's fine.
is going to be sort of predisposing their bias before the rest of the commission does.
To the chair, I think it's important too. Chances are the brief's gonna look very close to the initial assessment, right? So you're not gonna, there's not gonna be a lot where we're not going into some kind of detailed fact finding before, most of it has been done already, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's gonna be a second look at it to make sure that there was nothing missed, you know, there's gonna be, more of a team-based approach to it, so we'll have everybody in the office of the executive director of science take a specific look at it, make sure that it's more detailed than what was before, and that we can answer any questions that might come up, right, anticipating the hearing. But really, the reality is we're not reinvestigating incidents here, right? So it's not like this is an overly complicated thing. We're looking at the disciplinary matrix, right? The context that it was used and opining on if it was applied correctly in that term. So
Okay.
it's not going
Yeah,
to change
it's all
a
good.
lot.
Any questions about 2.6.8? The hearing procedures? All right, 2.6.9, evidentiary hearings. Agenda may not be amended to include additional items beyond the purpose of the hearing. And here's a sample agenda. 13 items.
Is there a simpler way to say this? It just says, like, the agenda may only have the evidentiary hearing as part of, like, no additional business other than the evidentiary hearing may be heard, and
You don't think it's clear in that first sentence? You want to say it differently? Is what you're saying?
I think like it's just saying that once we set the agenda, it can't be amended, but we can like this is not the actual agenda. This is like a sample of an agenda.
no, I think what it's saying is that the only thing that can happen in this meeting is the evidentiary
Yeah.
hearing. So it can't be like a regular meeting plus
Right.
an evidentiary hearing.
It's just this, and this is what the agenda looks like.
Yeah, but I think that what's confusing, it's saying an agenda may not be amended to include additional items beyond this, but then but we're putting that before the actual thing. So I'm wondering if it should just say the evidentiary hearing may be the only thing that is allowed during the meeting or something like that.
That would make it clear to just that the evidentiary hearing is the only item allowed on the agenda.
Yeah.
Right, and it can't be
Yeah,
it can't be
that's
amended.
fine.
You could just say the agenda shall be as follows, and
Yeah.
then list those 13 things. And-
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, say this agenda cannot be amended by vote during the hearing
There you go.
for any reason.
Yeah, just to make it clear that there's no other.
I have the evidentiary hearing is the only item allowed on the agenda and should mirror the following
Yeah.
sample.
There you go.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's the additional requirements below. No new evidence that's not been included. Time limits. Officer representative. Commissioner questions.
My only thing I highlighted in those bullet points was the second to last from the bottom of page 5. Is 10 minutes too long? I mean, do we need
Sorry, what point of page 5?
the second to last bullet point?
Martin and I talked about this. If you give each commissioner 10 minutes 2 times, it's 4 hours and 20 minutes total. So that's not going to work. You're going to have to
It just
rethink
seems like
that.
it's too long.
That's a lot, yeah.
So someone
I
could
said
easily,
five. That's what I'm
easily, people could filibuster your hearing then, just by talking.
I was going to suggest 5.
So.
Yeah.
So that'll half it, so it'll take it down to 2 hours and 10 minutes if you give each commissioner
Yeah.
2 times to speak for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Although, there's other parts of the meeting, so
Right.
not that everybody can speak that much, but yeah. So we're good with 5 minutes?
Well, should it just be can speak twice for a total of 5 minutes? I mean, would you really need to speak more than 5 minutes?
It's a lot still, man. Some people like to take more time than others.
And I'm not, do you have to give them 2 times is the other question, each maybe each person should just have 5 minutes to make their point and that's it. You know, if you make your point, because then you get in that, the 2 times is a one-up thing, right? And it gets messy when you allow that. So it's up to you all if you just want to people make their points, and then you know it's
So maybe just one time for 5 minutes.
I like 2 times. I'm a sucker for 2 times through the chair. I like a good discussion. You know, sometimes new ideas come up that I want to address.
Could it be like as Chandra suggested with a total of 5 minutes?
Yeah, total of 5 minutes, 2 times, no more than twice, for a combined total of 5 minutes. How's that?
That sounds like a good compromise. Because I like the idea of what I just want to make sure that we give people enough time, and then I know we can always revise the rules, but I want to make sure people have enough time. This is our first time, and I would hate for people to not have enough time.
And then the truth is, if they're making a good point and they're saying something substantial that's not disruptive, then we'll probably give them an extra few seconds anyway. So it's not like, but
And
if
5 minutes is a long time to talk.
it is a long time.
And they already have, in the bullet points for that, they get to ask questions of the executive director and the officer and of the witnesses, so that's a lot. So, okay,
That's a good point, actually.
yeah. All right, so we're at 5 minutes total, combined total for 2 times. Questions and time not transferable. ED officer and witnesses, 3 minutes in each instance. Any request for additional time or questions must be made in a motion and conferred by a majority of the commissioners. All right. Preponderance of evidence.
Did I include in this version the public commenter limit on time?
Yes.
Okay.
Public comments limited to 3 minutes per commenter, and comment time is not transferable.
Yeah. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Just ask a question about that. So, you know, do we want to put like a time constraint? We have like 3 minutes, but do we want to put like when you go to council, they have 30 minutes. So like we don't want a scenario where we have an hour public comment.
Yeah.
So do we want to put 30 minutes into the rule, or do we want to put up to 40, or what do we want to do? But if we have a hearing that is very popular with the public, we could potentially be dealing with, you know, lots of people that want to comment.
People that can comment, like how that's what city council does.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not certain that you could, look, the reality of hearings is they may go longer than you expected. Sometimes trials are like extended to a second day. Like, you know, like the idea that we can get this done in 2 hours, like our regular meetings, isn't practical. I would say at a minimum, when we schedule a hearing, we probably need to put a 4-hour block, you know, because you could have a tremendously long public comment period for cases that are extremely controversial. There's a lot of reasons why. So I would say the minimum time scheduled, and maybe that should be in here for a hearing, is 4 hours, you know, and this will be up to the co-chairs. If you see a point where you need to have a recess during that 4 hours, you go ahead and do that. And if you feel like it's not going to get done in that period, you may have to, you know, continue it to another date, you know. But I don't think this is practical in 2 hours, probably. Some of them might be quicker, but I would say anytime we schedule it, I would put a 4-hour block.
So we just want to leave it as is. That's that part. Okay.
Well, you raised a question if there's recess is not in 2.6.9, the list, the sample agenda. I mean, do we need to include that somewhere as a possibility? It's not a requirement, certainly. We would put recess if required or something.
Probably.
But otherwise, this would not allow it.
Through the chair, I also have in the sample agenda public comment twice because I didn't know where you guys wanted it in 4 and 8. So do you want to change, if you want it at the beginning, do you want to change 8 to recess, optional recess?
I think keeping public comment at the beginning could make sense.
I think so.
But that would be after they have seen any presentation. That would be before they see any presentations from the executive director. But the briefs are online, so they are able to see positions before they walk in the door.
But most people probably won't have it, so I think it would be nice to have it toward the end so that we can actually get people's perspective on.
Are we, well, the question is, what is the role of public comment, right? Does it influence our decision when what we're doing is basically making sure the matrix has been
Yeah,
followed?
that's true.
What role does public comment play?
My vote would be to keep it early, because I think that we are supposed to be making this decision based on like the
Yeah,
merits
that's
and the facts and what we've read, what's been given to us. And Bickerstaff always says we have to make sure we're fair to the officers, we have to make sure we're fair to the citizens. And I think that people can get persuaded. I would want the public comment to stay earlier.
That makes sense.
Through the chair, but then you're having a whole bunch of public comment coming at the people before they actually hear arguments from either side, unless they have read they obviously are reading the brief in advance, because we have very diligent commissioners. But now you're hearing a whole onslaught of people saying, this is how you should rule, and then it's like, okay, let's hear about the actual facts.
So do we put it after we make our, do we do it after we hear everything? Do we do it after we made a decision? Like, then what? I mean, I agree with you, but then where do we put it?
Any thoughts?
Come on, Charles.
Sway us.
Well, I was wondering if it's mandatory. That was my first thought. But I would say it would definitely need to be after. I would say not at the beginning. Is my thought.
The CPRB holds them at the beginning, just for point of reference.
I'm sorry, you said it.
The CPRB hold the public comments at the start of their meetings.
I think that's kind of standard, right, for public bodies. But this is kind of different than this is not just a normal running business meeting. Like, we are taxed with, you're right. And I listen, I think I agree that it should not be at the beginning. I just don't know where to put it.
I think as it's positioned now, if we kept it at number 8, for example, before closing comments, that, I think we're all sort of a little bit blind here. We don't really know what this is going to look like in practice. But I could see the logic of putting it right before closing comments, as opposed to, earlier or later.
I was just thinking maybe just put it a little earlier before, the ED and the officer get to share the information, because at that point, they just have whatever information is already out there and they can give their opinion. And we just have to know within ourselves that we are not going to let that sway us, that we're going to just look at the facts. So, but if they do, kind of make public comment later, then, they may be swayed, or they might have additional information and kind of maybe attack something or address something even further. So I'm thinking maybe a little bit earlier.
I'd like to propose that we flag this, because I don't think we're obviously, we might get through all this tonight, but we're going to want to look at the revisions, right? So
I'm sorry.
why don't we flag this one in particular and sort of look around and ask some people look at other processes and figure it out, and then we come back to it.
The only thing, I'm feeling a little bit stronger through the chair about my position that we don't want it to look like we are having undue bias on our commissioners panel before we hear the evidence, right? So I could easily see an argument being made. How could you say you're unbiased when you sat through 45 minutes of people screaming about how horrible this was or what the decision should be?
So-
I would recommend it going to 8.
So I'm going to say, but I think that's great. I think we should again, let's think about it. This is one particular thing we can talk to other people about, both in the community and people who've been through processes like this. And then when we come back, that'll be one thing we spend a lot more time on, but hopefully we can all do some homework, or at least some of us, and get some clarity on that. So I'm going to propose we do that.
Can I have one more comment on that?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I mean, if you really want to. I mean, just saying, like, I feel like I just said we're going to revisit it, right? So, in recess is another question, yeah. Yeah, I would like to keep
Yeah, okay.
moving. All right, so 2.6.9.
That's what we just did.
Yeah, so it's like, but we haven't talked through the end of that. Commission can only modify, impose final disciplinary action if, it's really about the discipline matrix. And so there's 3 findings, right? To increase or decrease in some circumstances, to affirm, or to state the matter for further investigation. Any comments or concerns about that? Or do you have any comments?
Through the chair, this was modified per the last discussion of trying to keep the decisions of the commission for now limited to only being items that are not in compliance with the discipline matrix. The only additional comment I would make to this standard is that Jason brought up a good point about the term discipline matrix. What does that specifically include? Because the discipline matrix could include the preliminary language in the GPO, so maybe he had like specific language he wanted to recommend for this section.
So when I say discipline matrix, it's shorthand for me, but it's actually more complex than that. So there's the policy itself, which is called the corrective action guidance, right? So, and there's also, so it goes in this order, right? You have the charter, you have the manual of rules, you have the corrective action guidance, and then you have the disciplinary matrix, which is just a table that says if this, that, right? So we don't want to limit ourselves to that. So we could just say, pursuant to the applicable charter, policy, rules, and matrix at the time, right? So I would just broaden that out so that you can make your decisions. If there was improper application of any of those things, it can weigh in your decision. So, did you catch that, Martin?
Just think if I agree.
So you're proposing eliminating 1, 2, and 3? You're making a more general statement?
No, we're talking about amending the paragraph right before 1, 2, and 3 to say now the commission can, through the chair, can only modify and impose final disciplinary action if the preponderance of the evidence in the matter shows that the original discipline or lack thereof was misapplied pursuant to the applicable charter, corrective action guidance, manual of rules, or discipline matrix at the time of the incident. Okay.
That sounds good.
Any questions about that? And then we have the co-chairs transcribing the decision into Appendix G and approved by a majority of commissioners present. I had a question about this last sentence, what that means. Any majority voted policy recommendations for the commission's policy committee to consider. I just don't know what that means or what that's referring to.
I think that came up in a discussion that Martin and I had about that there might be recommendations that come out of the hearing, than what we're seeing. But I don't think that would be, I don't think we would necessarily put that in I don't think we would vote on that in the full commission.
So through the chair, I changed a lot of this section actually. Because it didn't make this section of the manual was originally drafted was that the individual commissioners were filling out forms with their decisions. They were answering questions. They were giving policy recommendations on these forms, and it was all to sort of try to make sure that all of their decisions are being couched in the community factors if they wanted to go down that route, because the community factors was kind of a wild card. So there are a lot of questions they had to answer, a lot of things that they had to give us additional information to. Once we made a decision that we wanted to move to being only based on the discipline matrix being the guiding star, a lot of these other questions just sort of fell off the map. Like, we don't really need any answer to any of those, because the only one that really matters is if we agree if this discipline was adequately applied when you compare it against the matrix. But the one thing that stuck was a policy recommendation that can come out of the decision that is being made at the final decision. And we see this happening all the time at CPRB, where they'll make a decision and they'll say, okay, well, we also want to include a policy recommendation with this. And they'll do that. So we actually have our own internal policy thing that we do already. So if they're gonna, if there is a final policy recommendation by the commission that it wants to make while also making its decision, the co-chairs can note that on the final decision form. There's gonna be one decision form, and that policy recommendation will go immediately to the chair of the policy committee to then deal with it.
To the chair, I think that makes sense when you watch the CPRB meetings, and even with discussions had in NACO, they are making their decisions off of like what the actual policy is or what the training is, and oftentimes they feel like they wish that the policy was different, or they wish that like the training was different, and so kind of makes a little sense.
That's good. Any other questions on that? I want us to see if we can at least get through another page, which I think we can do. But I don't want to rush. If there's any questions around that, that was helpful. Helpful explanation from Martin, from Mr. Vilat. 2.6.11. Commissioner conduct restrictions. So this is all about recruiting in terms of family connections, financial relationship, or it's self-identifying a personal bias, and what must happen then. So they have to refrain from voting, discussion, deliberations, making recommendations, providing advice, formally or informally lobbying, or taking any other action on the matter. Seems pretty straightforward. I don't think anything's missing. I didn't flag anything when I read it.
Can I just ask one question for number 5, providing advice? I just wasn't sure, like specifying, does that mean like giving advice to other commissioners about the case? Like they basically shouldn't be talking to any of us that are going to vote or anything about
That's
the
how I
case?
understood it.
Okay.
Do we need clarification on that, or is it?
Maybe say providing advice to commissioners that are not recused?
To other commissioners or staff?
Yeah, something like that. Like basically anyone who's involved in create, like a staff is going to be helping compile things, and then, I just want to make it a little bit more specific.
I made the change.
Awesome. Furthermore, that's about discussing the case with anybody, basically. Except for limited to explaining this policy to that individual. And making motions, discussing the merits, making motions. Any person can bring an alleged violation of these rules to the co-chairs of the commission, who will then investigate and remedy.
So from the last iteration, this is the shortened version, so I slashed a lot of the whole appeals language. I just thought that got overly complicated for no reason. I kind of went down a wormhole on that one. So basically what we're saying is that we're trusting the co-chairs to make good decisions on this, and if you guys don't like it, you're going to bring it up in a separate motion to discipline the co-chairs. Like, not just get involved in delaying an appeal process on this specific issue.
Agreed.
To the chair, I just have one more on the further commissioners must refrain from discussing the case, including. I just wanted to clarify, are we saying like immediately or at a certain point after the full commission decides to hear the case? I just want to know at what point do we impose that they must refrain from discussing the case?
Say that again?
Like I'm trying to figure out like at what point would we say, must they refrain? So I'm like saying, is it like immediately, or is it when they recuse themselves? Is it after the commission decides to hear the case, but like at what point do they need to really stop talking
That's a
about
good
this
point,
case?
because once the accountability committee makes the decision to schedule a hearing, what gets sent out to the full commission in terms of how much do they know? Like, they might not know anything about the case until they receive the briefs. And then at that point, it would probably be, is that the point where they would recuse themselves?
As soon as they're.
No, people are recusing themselves. If they need to recuse themselves for whatever reason they've identified, they're recusing themselves as soon as is from the moment that they discover it, or they acknowledge it, or it's discovered, or whatever. And they're staying out of it all the way through to the very end, if that's the question. On when you are allowed to start talking about the merits of the subject matter of the case, it's only once you really get to the full commission hearing are you talking about the merits of the subject matter of the case. Now, there is a little bit of that happening at the accountability committee level, because the accountability committee has to decide based on the merits of the subject matter of the case whether it's a case to recommend to the full commission or not. But that in of itself is pretty limited, and we're not then taking all this information and running wild with it and talking to all the other commissioners about it.
One thing I'm wondering is, should we put something in here about, for the accountability committee, that the co-chairs can, so like, if members of the accountability committee, while making the decision process, if they recuse themselves, if that takes us below quorum, should we put something in here about the co-chair stepping in?
I think it would just be a natural thing based on our other rules, is that if there is somebody that's being recused, that's dropping the total number that can participate in the committee. So that would enact the other rule where the co-chairs can come and step in.
Well, right, but it wouldn't change the membership of the committee because they would still be attending committee meetings. It's just that for that one particular agenda item.
A co-chair would walk in the room when the other committee member walks out the room.
Okay, cool. Good.
And the other thing I want to say, I just think about what we went through with the grants, and I think before everything is sent to the full commission, we should ask for recusals. Like, I think that, like, before the.
But how would they know?
Because we could send them like the names and stuff like that, and before they get, because we just don't want to be in a situation where they're like, oh, but they already have the files, and they've already like, we don't know what they've read, and like I just think that before they send it to the full commission, maybe we should ask for recusals.
No, I think that's fine if they have the files and they look at the stuff. What the problem is if they start unduly influencing other commissioners, because they're talking about things that they're biased on. And you really shouldn't be doing that at all anyway until you start seeing the full case file, until you start actually hearing the case on its merits. At any point when we send a case file, if somebody recognizes they know somebody and it violates one of these rules or whatever the rule is, then they should be saying, hey guys, I'm out of this one from here. And letting the co-chairs know, or the accountability committee know, or whatever, but recusing themselves from it.
To the chair, just to add to that, it's a two-phase process. So the rest of the commission is doing their world, right? It's the accountability committee members first who have to, when we get a petition, they have to first assess themselves, right? And they would recuse at that point, because that keeps the integrity of the case moving forward, right? The other commissioners don't have to answer that question until after the accountability does its thing, and then they say, we're advancing this case, and they could say, well, I recuse because now I'm involved with it. So I think there's a crossover. If the full commission isn't even, it's not like we send a notice to all of our other commissioners every time we get a complaint. If we start doing that, then it's different, but,
Yeah, and through the chair, putting a specific time on when we're calling for recusals, we see whatever happens. Sometimes a case will come up in a main meeting motion and someone's trying to bring something and, it could happen at any time is what I'm trying to say. So why not make it so it's something that all the commissioners are going to understand, and if at any point it's popping up and they recognize it, that's when they take the step. And it's on them to do that.
Makes sense. All right, any other questions about this? I think we've covered it.
Since
So-
we have done, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, since we have gotten through it, should we go back to the question of public comment?
No.
No, okay.
No, I think we need to get other input.
Yeah,
I
that's
just don't think,
fine.
yeah. Sorry to be so blunt. Um, Power of the chair.
Yeah.
No, so, we are at, we could, I would like us to think about a next meeting. So my proposal for how we move this forward is like, we get another draft. I don't know what your timeline would be for getting another draft to us. Tomorrow?
You're
No.
killing me, you're killing me on another, what do I don't even need to drop anything else. I mean,
No,
we
it's
can
just
make
the
notes.
revising from the.
Yeah, I
notes
can send it to you right after this meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it's-
I've been doing it live,
yeah, that's what
so,
I figured. So it's not like a rewrite. It's
yeah,
just,
we haven't done anything substantial, just small changes.
yeah. So that's good. So then I would love us to come back together and look at that and approve it, because we'll have already done that. We have a little bit of time to look into the question around public comment. We might even hear from a public commenter tonight, if we get this done and have some time for that. So can we schedule another meeting,
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Like for,
Next Tuesday and Wednesday, we have commission meetings.
Tuesday,
which
we have
Tuesday?
3 next week, actually.
We have, budget and grants, but that's earlier in the day. That's Monday at 3:30. What is Tuesday and Wednesday? What are the meetings? Training,
Accountability and training from 6 to 8 both nights.
right. We could do something Monday.
That's fine.
Thursday's open.
It's not open for, well, yeah, it might be open for me, actually.
I wouldn't be able to do before 5:30
What's that?
on Monday.
Thursday? Monday? Which day? Sorry,
Monday.
Monday. Can we do Monday?
That works.
So 5:30, 6? What are we doing?
Six.
I mean, do you think that, you think the budget and grants committee is gonna use 2 hours?
Well, you can't come before 5:30 anyway.
Before 5:30, so.
So the budget grants is at 3:30. That's the key, it's basically the Q&A from people who are doing the RFP, most of it. So, yeah, and then, so if we do 5:30 is fine with me. Is there any conflict on the staff side? Okay,
I think six would be better, so she wouldn't have to worry about traffic. as
No,
much.
it's up to her, yeah,
I start my new job, which is closer, so
okay,
5:30 is fine. Thanks for looking up for me, Lou.
5:30.
5:30 on Monday. And we could also then, if we have time, we could touch on some of these other issues as well. Because I think there's a lot to do, so.
So it's 2 hours.
Sorry. Yeah.
What's that supposed to mean?
3:30. I have to put in my phone.
So what, 5:30 to 7:30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what time my volleyball game's at.
All right, so that's good. And the other thing is that we have a meeting scheduled, then I think we can cancel the Wednesday, July 3rd meeting.
Yeah.
Because no one's gonna wanna meet on.
That's my birthday.
Oh, we should go out and have like some cake or
We
something.
know, I would love to have a meeting on my birthday. That's the best way to celebrate.
If we go out with him, we have to follow around on his birthday with cameras and make it an open public.
Right,
That's true, that's true, that's true.
We just have like, we'll have one party with all, like, we just all be in different places.
Yeah.
and just
I'll
everyone's
have to
wanna
have
join
public
in.
birthday comments.
All right. Yeah, okay, so, public comment.
Sorry, this is Lou. With all the unpopular opinions. This meeting may sound peaceful, but it's very unproductive. The staff has done lots of things ahead of time, but obviously some of the members, they couldn't really do homework before coming to this meeting. So we have to go through lots of the very fundamental stuff, which, for example, is this in the charter or is this allowed in the charter or all those kind of things. Now, I would definitely say one particular sentence, Commissioner Dr. John Adams had a very good input on that. However, throughout the pages I've seen, somebody, of course, originally did lots of copy and paste. So that means if his suggestion is really better, that means the same sentences in other sections should all be changed. The part about the one is by commissions, that particular one, it was the third point in the first one, the 2.6.1, that particular thing. Also, even this is a civilian oversight entity, but none of you are directly elected, voted by people. You guys are still selected by mayors and county council, or city council president. So in that case, the way you discuss about public comments, believe me, lots of people will get very discouraged. Yes, you don't like to have people loud in the meetings, but please don't forget, some of you have been loud. So if community members is eager to express themselves, to point out something you guys don't do well, and when you have that discussion, people will think that you are not open-minded, you cannot take criticism. That does not make any of you to look good. If you guys all want to do this to look good, then this is the opposite result you will get. Already, we don't have enough civil participation in our civil engagement in the city. You actually want to open the door for another one to discourage people's participation. I'm sorry, this is a very peaceful but disappointing meeting. The person you guys dislike the most actually has seen this problem from the very beginning. And I have been doing my part to alert you since the beginning of last year when you guys started having meetings. The monthly meeting right now we have is called public meetings, but you want to shorten or cut public comment section. That's not what we actually remember how it was discussed at the very beginning last year. You said this is a public meeting. You want to encourage the community member to come out to talk about issues. But now you are either making that only one time for public comments, or you say you only put that at the beginning or you only put it at the end. You cut off all the flexibility, all the good intent you guys actually agreed last year, just because you guys don't like people to be loud. I'm sorry. Sometimes noisy, loud meetings will actually give us more alert to remind us to review what we have done. It can help. If you close that door, do you think people will really trust you? People will have a faith on you? I doubt. In the past, I only mentioned community members, they have come to me to complain about things. Now I have even more officers coming to me to complain. Do we want to go down this way? We have issue 24 to open the door for the better community police practicing. But now, if you guys just want to look good and you don't like to have a noisier meetings, you guys are tired, you guys don't want to have a 2.5 hours on the monthly meeting, the public meeting. Do you know how many people will be so disappointed? And they will consider this commission will be no different from all other bureaucracies they have encountered. That would just shut off the lights people want to see and people wanted to follow. Please do not do that. Otherwise, you may leave. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.